There are mothers who make their daughters feel safe in this world, and then there are mothers who study their daughters long enough to learn exactly how much they can take from them. It took me 37 years to understand which kind I had. My name is Raina Holloway. I'm a single mom in Matthews, North Carolina, and I run operations for Piedmont Freight Logistics. I make a good living. Not glamorous money, not trust fund money, just the kind you earn by solving one problem after another and never letting anything fall apart for too long. For years, my family treated that like it belonged to all of us. Need groceries? Call Raina. Need school supplies? Call Raina. Need help with a bill, a flight, a repair, a holiday, a last-minute emergency? Call Raina. So when I paid for a family trip to Bali, I thought I was finally doing something big enough, generous enough, memorable enough, that maybe for once I would not be treated like an open tab with a pulse. I paid for 6 people: me, Evan, my parents, Beverly and Thomas Holloway, and my younger sister, Kelsey Grant, with her husband, Derek. Kelsey's kids, Addie and Cole, were staying home because my mother said the flight would be too much for them, and at the time that sounded practical enough that I did not question it. 3 days before we were supposed to leave, I was kneeling beside Evan's open suitcase, folding swim trunks and rolling t-shirts when someone knocked on the door. Evan was on the floor by the coffee table, pressing a cheap gold sticker shaped like a temple on the front pocket of his little navy suitcase. He had bought it at Target with his own allowance and announced it was for travel luck. When I opened the door, my mother stepped inside before I moved back. My father came in behind her, slower, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes already avoiding mine. My mother did not sit down. She stood in the middle of my living room like she was there to inspect it. She said, "I talked to Kelsey. We think this trip needs to be smaller." I remember blinking at her because the sentence made no sense on contact. Smaller how? She looked toward Evan's suitcase, then back at me. "Addie and Cole are not comfortable with you and Evan going. Kelsey thinks it will be calmer if it is just the adults." I actually laughed once, not because anything was funny, but because my body needed somewhere for the shock to go. I said, "You mean the trip I paid for?" My mother straightened. "Raina, do not start. Who decided this?" "The family." "Which family?" She exhaled through her nose, already irritated that I was not making this easy. "You know exactly what I mean." "When did this conversation happen?" My father shifted his weight, but said nothing. I asked again, "When did this happen, and why am I hearing it in my own house 3 days before our flight?" My mother lifted her chin. "Because I knew you would make a scene if we told you sooner." That was the moment I noticed the card in her hand, my dark blue debit card, the one I had given her almost 3 months earlier when she called saying she needed to pay a specialist copay and left her wallet in Dad's truck. I looked at her hand and asked, "Why do you still have my card?" Her face changed for half a second, then the practiced version came back. "I needed it for a few things. That is not the issue." "No," I said, "that is absolutely the issue." My mother's voice took on that tone she uses when she wants to sound calm and reasonable for the record. "You always make everything about fairness. Life is not fair, Raina. You are fine. Kelsey is the one juggling 2 kids and a husband who works himself into the ground. Sometimes the person who needs more gets more." "So this is really happening? You are standing in my house telling me my 8-year-old son and I are not invited on a trip that I paid for?" My mother folded her arms. "You can still go somewhere else with Evan another time. This trip has already become too complicated." From the hallway, a small voice said, "Mom?" I turned. Evan was standing there with his passport in both hands. He looked from me to my mother to the suitcase on the floor and asked, "We are not going anymore?" I crouched down so fast my knee hit the hardwood, not because I had an answer, but because I needed him to see my face before he saw theirs. I said, "Go upstairs for a minute, okay? Let me handle this." He did not cry. That made it worse. He just nodded once and walked toward the stairs slowly, still holding that passport, like if he let go of it, the whole trip would disappear. My mother folded her arms. "We are done here." "No," I said, "we are not. Give me my card." She stared at me, then looked at my father. He pulled his hand from his pocket, took the card from her, and set it on the small entry table by the door. Still, he did not meet my eyes. They left. Gravel crunched under Dad's tires. The house went quiet in that sharp, unnatural way homes do after a fight children are pretending not to hear. I picked up the card, unlocked my phone, and opened my banking app. At first, it was just noise. Charges, dates, merchants. Then the patterns snapped into focus. A steakhouse in South Charlotte, Target, a nail salon, Amazon, a children's boutique, a weekend spa package, a luggage store, gas stations near Kelsey's subdivision in Indian Trail. The transactions stretched back nearly 3 months, small enough individually that they never tripped the kind of panic that makes you comb through every line, scattered enough that they had let themselves blend into a season where work was crushing and Evan had school and I was using my main checking account and digital wallet for almost everything. I scrolled farther. The total climbed. Then I checked my email. There was a message from the resort in Ubud confirming that a request to modify my reservation had been denied 10 days earlier. Someone had called asking to remove 2 names from the booking, mine and Evan's. The request was refused because the caller was not the primary booking holder. I stood in my own foyer with my debit card in one hand and my phone in the other, looking at Evan's little suitcase with the crooked temple sticker on the front. My family had not just decided that afternoon to push us out. They had started doing it while I was still paying for everything. I took my laptop to the kitchen table after Evan fell asleep and opened it the same way I opened spreadsheets at work when a route failed and nobody wanted to admit why. Quietly, methodically. No drama until I knew exactly where the damage was. The house had gone still. The dishwasher hummed. One of Evan's sneakers was tipped over by the back door where he had kicked it off and forgotten it. I pulled the PDF statements from my bank, grabbed a yellow highlighter from the junk drawer, and started marking every charge I did not recognize. The steakhouse was first, Sawyer's Chop House in South Charlotte. $189. The second I saw it, I remembered Kelsey's birthday last fall. We were at a long table with candles and glass jars and a waiter who kept recommending wine none of us needed. Derek had laughed too loudly and said work had been slow because rain had wrecked his schedule for 2 weeks. Kelsey had leaned toward me with that same practiced little sigh she'd used since high school. "I'm so embarrassed even asking, but could you get dinner this time? Just this once." Just this once had cost me $189 plus tip, and everybody at that table had acted like I was generous instead of expected. I highlighted the charge and moved on. Target brought back August. Addie needed folders, Cole needed sneakers. The school list was longer than Kelsey expected, and she texted me from the parking lot with photos of a cart already full. "I'm short by like 200. Can you help me, and I'll pay you back after Derek gets paid?" She never did. A plumbing supply charge from Monroe sent me straight to the winter before that, when my parents' water heater gave out during a cold snap. My mother had called while I was in the pickup line at Evan's school. "Your father can't keep taking freezing showers at his age, Raina. We're not asking for much." It was always not much, not in the moment, not if you only looked at one thing at a time. Then I found an old airline charge tied to a booking site I recognized. That one stopped me longer than the rest because it brought back Easter weekend 2 years ago. Kelsey had cried on the phone about needing to get home and wanting the kids to see family. I had paid for her ticket because she said it mattered. 3 days later, she posted photos from a concert in Atlanta, wristband on, drink in hand, caption full of stars and exclamation points. She told me later the concert had been a surprise, like that explained the ticket I bought her for a holiday she barely showed up to. I kept going. School supplies, holiday groceries, car insurance for my parents, a dental crown for my mother, camp deposit for Addie, birthday gifts, home repairs, random emergencies that somehow never reversed direction and became help for me. I opened a new sheet and started building it properly. Year, category, amount. That is what I do when something is too big to carry all at once. I sort it until it tells the truth. By 11:47, the total on my screen had crossed $40,000. I sat back and looked at the number until it stopped feeling like math and started feeling like a sentence. It had never been one crisis. It had never been one favor. It had been a system, and I had been the utility running behind the walls. That was the part that hurt most. Not that my mother took. It was that she took like it was logical, like there was no moral issue because, in her mind, I was the daughter who could absorb it. Kelsey was the daughter who needed protecting. I was the daughter who needed using. I called the resort in Bali a little after midnight my time because I did the time difference in my head and figured it would still be business hours there. A woman named Madison Cole answered in a bright, efficient voice that made me feel suddenly embarrassed to be unraveling my family across 12 time zones. I gave her my reservation number and the name on the booking. I'm trying to confirm whether someone attempted to modify my reservation. A pause while she typed. Then, yes, Miss Holloway, there was a request made to remove 2 guests from your booking approximately 10 days ago. My hand tightened around the phone. Were the names mine and my son's? Yes. Did the caller identify herself? She identified herself as Mrs. Grant. She knew the travel dates and room category, but she could not provide the confirmation code. We did not make any changes. I thanked her twice because politeness is muscle memory, then ended the call and opened my email. It took me less than 5 minutes to find the message I had sent my mother 6 weeks earlier with the full itinerary attached. Beverly had texted asking what time the airport shuttle ran from the resort and whether breakfast would have anything Evan would eat because he was picky in the mornings. I had forwarded everything without thinking. Flight details, resort name, check-in date, room type. Enough to get close. Not enough to finish the job, but enough to try. I stared at the sent email for a long moment, then called Monica. She picked up on the second ring. You sound awake? I am awake. What happened? I told her everything. My mother showing up, my card, the charges, the resort call, the itinerary. I expected sympathy. What I got was Monica in full therapist voice, with the warmth stripped out and the truth left bare. This is not family stress, Reina. This is financial abuse wrapped in the language of family. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. I hate that that sounds right. It sounds right because it is right. When people make you feel selfish for closing access to your time, your money, and your peace, that is not closeness, that is control. And when they use a child to justify excluding you, that is not conflict, that is harm. I looked at the spreadsheet glowing on my screen. Monica was quiet for a second, then asked one question. In all these years, has anyone once asked whether you could actually afford carrying them? No, not once. That's your answer. After we hung up, my phone buzzed again. Thomas. I almost let it go, then answered because I wanted to hear how far he would go to stay in the middle of something that no longer had a middle. Your mother is upset, he said. I believe that. Everybody's tired, Reina. Maybe this can wait until after the trip. I looked at the statements spread across the table, the highlighted charges, the total, the email from Ubud. Wait until after the trip, so what, Dad? So everyone can enjoy the vacation I paid for while Evan and I stay home? He exhaled, but did not deny anything. That told me more than words would have. Maybe we all need to calm down, he said. I ended the call and went back to the statements. Near 1 in the morning, I matched 2 Amazon orders to a delivery address in a cul-de-sac I recognized immediately. Kelsey Street, same house number, same zip code. The money was not drifting through my mother by accident. It was moving in one direction over and over. The next morning, I still had to get Evan dressed, signed, fed, and out the door. I still had to answer emails from Piedmont Freight Logistics. I still had to reroute a delayed shipment headed for Spartanburg because one driver called out sick and another trailer had been loaded wrong. Real life does not pause so you can process betrayal in a clean, dramatic block. It just stacks one demand on top of the next and waits to see what breaks. That afternoon, when I picked Evan up from school, he climbed into the back seat with his Bali book tucked under his arm. He buckled in, opened it to the page with the monkey forest, and asked in the small, careful voice children use when they are trying not to want something too much, "Are we still going to see the monkeys?" I looked at him in the rearview mirror and realized the question was no longer what my family had done to me. It was what I was going to let my son learn from it. That answer came faster than I wanted it to. When we got home, Evan didn't do what he always did. He didn't kick off his shoes by the back door and race to the pantry asking what we had for a snack. He didn't drop his backpack on the floor and then pretend he forgot to hang it up. He walked straight into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, stared at it like there might be a different life inside, and closed it again. I set my keys on the counter and watched him. His shoulders looked smaller than they had that morning. "You okay, buddy?" He shrugged without turning around. "How was school?" "Fine." That was when I knew fine meant nothing close to fine. He moved to the table, climbed into the chair he always used for homework, and set his Bali book down in front of him without opening it. I waited. I have learned that with kids, the first question usually isn't the real one. The real one comes after they decide whether you can handle hearing it. Finally, he said, "Do Addie and Cole really not like me?" The room went still around that sentence. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Why would you ask me that?" He picked at a loose corner on the book cover. "Grandma said they wanted the trip to be quieter." Then he looked up at me, all big eyes and trying so hard to be reasonable. "Am I too loud?" I felt something cold and sharp move through me. "Who told you that exactly?" "Grandma. She said some kids just don't mix the same way, and maybe I have a lot of energy." He swallowed. "Should I try not to bother people so much?" There it was. Not just hurt, adjustment. He was already trying to make himself smaller in exchange for being included. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped the floor. Then I made myself sit back down because none of this was his fault, and he didn't need my panic. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. "Listen to me really carefully. You are not the problem." He blinked. "You are not too much. You are not too loud. You are not the reason any of this is happening. Grown-ups are making bad choices. That belongs to them, not to you." His fingers relaxed a little under mine. "Then we're still going?" I looked him right in the face and said the truth as clearly as I could. "I am not letting anyone take this trip from you." He searched my face for a few seconds, the way children do when they are deciding whether a promise is made of real material or just words. Then he nodded. "Okay." My phone buzzed on the counter. Beverly. I let it go to voicemail, then another buzz, and another. I waited until Evan took his book and went upstairs to change out of his school clothes before I played the message. My mother's voice filled the kitchen in that dry, controlled tone she uses when she thinks she's the only adult in the room. "Evan is a sweet boy, but not every child meshes with his personality. You need to be realistic about that." I stared at the phone long enough for the screen to go dark. That was it. Not the charges, not the resort call, not even standing in my own living room being told I was not invited on a trip I had funded. It was hearing my mother talk about my son like he was a scheduling inconvenience that pushed something inside me into place. Clean. Final. I didn't feel explosive. I felt organized. I called the airline first. After 40 minutes of menus and hold music, I reached a woman who sounded tired but competent. I gave her the reservation number, confirmed I was the purchaser and primary contact, answered the security questions, and explained that I needed to separate and reissue part of the reservation. She put me on hold twice, came back, asked me to confirm the names again. Beverly Holloway, Thomas Holloway, Kelsey Grant, Derek Grant. And you are retaining travel for yourself and one minor passenger? Yes, Raina Holloway and Evan Holloway. There was more keyboard clicking. Then she said, "All right, Miss Holloway, the 4 passengers have been canceled. Your itinerary has been preserved under a new confirmation number for you and Evan. You'll receive the updated email shortly." I thanked her, wrote down the new number, and felt the first clean breath I'd taken in 24 hours move all the way through my lungs. I wasn't ruining the trip. I was taking back the part that was mine. The resort was next. Madison Cole remembered me from the night before. I told her I wanted to cancel the original suite booking and reserve something smaller for 2 guests only, near Ubud if possible, quiet and child-friendly. She offered me a smaller property with a terrace and breakfast included, close enough to reach the monkey forest without turning every morning into a production. It was less expensive, less grand, and exactly right. I booked it before I could talk myself into one more ounce of guilt. Then I called the bank. Erica Phelps in fraud services sounded young and very awake. I explained it simply. I had temporarily given physical possession of my debit card to a family member for one specific medical expense. The card had not been returned, and charges continued for months without my knowledge or consent. I wanted the card shut down immediately and a claim opened on the unauthorized transactions. Are you comfortable confirming that the purchases after that original approved charge were not authorized by you? Yes. Do you wish to press criminal charges at this time? No. I want the card closed. I want access cut off, and I want my money back. She handled it without drama. Card deactivated, new card issued, fraud review opened, provisional credit possible depending on investigation. When I hung up, my phone lit with a text from Kelsey. Does the resort have strong Wi-Fi? Derek needs to check email. A second text came less than a minute later. Also, can you send me $350 for souvenirs for the kids? I read those messages twice because the entitlement was almost hard to process in real time. My sister had either tried to remove me from a vacation I paid for or stood beside our mother while it happened and still somehow saw me as customer service for the trip. I did not answer, not to punish her, not to be cruel. I stayed silent because for the first time in years, I understood that every immediate soft response from me had been interpreted as permission. By late afternoon, the notification chain started. First, the airline emails, then the resort cancellation, then 3 missed calls from my mother in under 5 minutes, then Kelsey, then my father, then Kelsey again. I turned my phone face down on the kitchen table. Evan came padding into the room in socks and sat beside me on the couch with the remote. I pulled up a video of the monkey forest on the television. We watched tourists laugh nervously while monkeys darted over stone walls and banyan roots. Evan pointed to one on the screen. I want that one to jump on me. I put my arm around him and leaned back into the cushions. This time, the only thing climbing on you is going to be a monkey, not grown-up problems. My phone kept vibrating against the table behind us, a trapped, angry sound I had spent too many years responding to on the first ring. I left it there and watched the monkeys with my son. For the first time since my mother walked into my house, I knew exactly what came next, and this time it wasn't me who was going to panic. My phone started before the sun was fully up. Not one call, not 2. A steady vibration across the kitchen counter while I packed Evan's lunch and signed a reading log and tried to act like the air in my house had not changed. Beverly left 3 voicemails before 7:30. The first was sharp and furious. "You are embarrassing this family. Do you understand that?" The second came 20 minutes later and sounded almost wounded. "I have no idea why you are doing this to me after everything I have done for you." The third was colder. "If you canceled anything, you need to fix it before tonight. I will pretend this never happened if you put it back the way it was." Kelsey's texts were even less subtle. "Have you lost your mind? What am I supposed to tell the kids? Derek works all week, and now you pulled this?" I did not answer any of them. I got Evan to school, drove to Piedmont Freight Logistics, handled a delayed loadout of Greensboro, rerouted a driver, approved overtime, and kept my face neutral in 3 separate meetings. Nobody at work needed to know my family was trying to rewrite me in real time. By 11, I had 32 unread messages from home and 1 pounding headache behind my eyes. Thomas showed up at my house just after lunch. I saw his truck through the front window while I was reheating coffee I had forgotten to drink that morning. He stood on the porch with both hands in his coat pockets, shoulders rounded, like a man who had spent most of his adult life waiting for storms to pass instead of learning how to walk through them. I opened the door and stepped back. He looked older in daylight, more tired than guilty, which somehow made it worse. "Can I come in?" I nodded once. He sat at the kitchen table. I stayed standing long enough to pour coffee into a mug and set it in front of him. He didn't touch it. He looked at the table, not at me. "Your mother is taking this hard." I leaned against the counter. "That's what you came to tell me?" "No." His fingers tightened around the mug, even though he still hadn't lifted it. "Timing got out of hand." I almost laughed. "Out of hand is a shipment with the wrong barcode, Dad. This is not out of hand." He winced, not dramatically, just enough that I knew he heard the difference. I asked him the question I had already answered for myself. "How long did you know she still had my card?" He took too long to speak. "I saw it in her wallet a few times." "A few times." He nodded without looking up. "Did you know she was using it?" "I saw boxes show up at Kelsey's." He swallowed. "I saw a spa receipt on the counter once. I asked your mother about it and she told me you knew. She said you were helping." I stared at him. "And you believed that?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "I wanted to believe it." "No," I said. "You wanted not to fight with her." That landed. He went still. I stepped closer to the table. "You did not. You watched me pay for people over and over and told yourself it was fine because nobody was yelling in your kitchen." His eyes finally lifted to mine, wet around the edges and empty in the middle. "I'm sorry." I believed he meant it. That did not make it enough. I said, "Sorry after the damage is a sound. It's not a repair." He looked down again. "I know." When he left, he moved slower than when he had arrived. I stood at the door long enough to watch his truck pull out. Then I called Monica. She picked up on the first ring. "Please tell me you ate something today." "Toast." "That is not food." It was enough to keep me from passing out. That got a tired laugh out of her. Then I told her Thomas had come by and admitted more than he meant to. She listened, quiet, then said, "You need to call Wade." "Your uncle, Wade." "Why?" "Because if Beverly is doing what I think she's doing, this is not new. People like her do not invent a pattern in their 60s. I sat back at the kitchen table and called him. Wade Porter had always been the kind of man who never wasted 10 words when 3 would do. He answered on the 4th ring. "You okay, kid?" "No." He was silent for a beat. Talk. I gave him the short version, the trip, the card, the booking, the money. When I finished, he let out a breath through his nose that sounded more tired than surprised. Your mother did something like this to Rita Sloane. I straightened in my chair. Rita? Years ago. Started small, help with bills, some groceries, then a little more, then more. When Rita stopped, Beverly got ahead of it, started telling people Rita had changed, gotten cold, gotten funny about money. By the time Rita figured out what was happening, half the family already had a story in their heads. I pressed my hand flat against the table. Why did nobody tell me? Because in this family, Wade said, people mistake avoiding mess for keeping peace. Then his voice went rougher. Beverly always needs somebody underwriting what she likes to call closeness. The minute that person stops paying, she changes the story before they can. That sentence stayed in my chest after we hung up. Not long after, Derek called. I almost ignored it. Then I answered because he was the one person in this mess I still couldn't quite place. He sounded winded, like he had stepped away from work to make the call. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. That trip? Bali. All of it. You really paid for all of it? I looked out the kitchen window at the bare line of the fence. Did you not know, or did you never think to ask? Silence. Then quieter. I didn't know it was all you. Did you know Kelsey called the resort and tried to remove me and Evan? Another silence. Longer this time. No. I believed him, not because I trusted him, but because his confusion had edges on it. I said, then maybe you should start asking your wife better questions. He exhaled hard. I think I need to. He did not apologize for her. He did not defend her. He just sounded like a man discovering that the floor under his marriage might not be level. That night, after Evan fell asleep on the couch with his Bali book open on his chest, I spread everything across the dining table and started building the folder. 3 months of statements, highlighted clean. The resort email, my forwarded itinerary to Beverly, a timeline of the trip, a simple spreadsheet of the money I had covered over the years, the categories stripped down to what anyone could understand in 10 seconds. School supplies, insurance, dental work, holiday groceries, airfare, home repair, camp deposit, gifts, emergency help never repaid. Not too much, just enough. My phone buzzed again. Beverly. I answered this time. Her voice came smooth and low, the rage filed down into something colder. Put the flights back tonight and I will consider this finished. I sat at the table with the folder open in front of me and looked at Evan asleep under the throw blanket on the couch. I said, I don't need you to consider it finished. I need you to stop acting like it never happened. A pause. Then her voice sharpened. If you show up tomorrow and make a scene, you'll regret it. I looked at the papers under my hand. Statement, email, dates, numbers, years. I am not making a scene, Mom. I'm correcting one. I hung up before she could answer. A little later, I carried the folder out to my car and placed it on the passenger seat. Through the windshield, the street looked quiet enough to fool anybody. Porch lights, empty driveways, a dog barking somewhere in the distance. Inside, Evan was still asleep with one hand resting on the page with the monkeys. Nothing about the night looked dramatic. That was the thing about the worst moments in a family. They rarely announce themselves. They sit down beside casserole dishes and folding chairs and church smiles and wait for somebody to tell the truth out loud. By then, I had everything I needed. All that was left was to walk it into my mother's backyard and set it down where everybody could see it. My mother's backyard looked exactly the way she wanted the world to see her. String lights were looped from the fence to the oak tree at the back corner. The folding tables were covered in red and white checkered cloths. Someone had arranged bowls of coleslaw and baked beans like this was just another easy summer cookout in Matthews, another family evening with neighbors drifting in and out, and church friends calling everybody honey. Thomas stood at the grill in an apron that said, "Best Grandpa," turning chicken with the same slow concentration he used on anything that let him keep his mouth shut. Beverly floated between guests with a smile already fixed in place. Mrs. Delaney Price sat near the patio with a glass of iced tea. Pastor Elaine Brooks was beside her. Wade and his wife stood near the fence. Kelsey and Derek were together but not close. Even from the gate I could see the air between them. Then Evan stepped into the yard, and Addie ran straight at him. She threw her arms around his middle like she had been waiting for him, then grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the fence. "Come see the fireflies. There are so many tonight." That was the first crack. No lecture could have done what one 10-year-old girl did in 2 seconds without trying. I closed the gate behind us and kept walking. Beverly saw me, faltered for half a beat, then recovered and turned toward the table with her smile still on. A few minutes later, she tapped her glass with a fork. "I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Family time means more now than ever. Tomorrow we head off on a beautiful trip, and we are just so blessed to have this chance." One of my cousins turned toward me with a bright expression. "Bali, right? You must be excited." Beverly answered before I could. Raina ended up too busy with work. You know how demanding her job is. That was my moment. Not because it was dramatic, but because if I let that sentence live in the air unanswered, it would become the version people remembered. I set my paper plate down on the table and stood. I think a few things need to be said correctly. The yard quieted in that instant way people do when they sense something has already happened and they just haven't been told what. I kept my voice level. The Bali trip was paid for by me. The flights, the rooms, the transfers, the activities, all of it. Beverly's smile vanished. "Raina, this is not the time." "It became the time when you told people I chose not to go." Nobody spoke. Even Thomas stopped moving at the grill. 3 days before our flight, I said, my mother came to my house, handed back my debit card, and told me that Evan and I would not be going. I pulled the first statement from the folder and handed it to Wade, who passed it to his wife, then on to Mrs. Delaney. "These are the charges made on my card over nearly 3 months after it was supposed to be returned to me." Kelsey's face tightened hard enough to change it. I did not rush. I named only enough to let the pattern speak. Steakhouse, spa package, Target, Amazon deliveries, luggage, nail salon, nearly all of it near Kelsey's neighborhood. I looked at my sister. No permission, no discussion, no repayment. Kelsey stepped forward, color high in her cheeks. "Are you seriously trying to make me look like a thief in front of everybody?" I kept my eyes on her. "You used my money, and Mom knew." Derek turned his head toward her then, slow and stunned. He said nothing yet, but I saw the first real shift in him. I took out the resort email next. 10 days before our flight, somebody called the resort in Ubud and asked to remove me and Evan from the booking while keeping the rest of the reservation intact. People actually leaned in. Pastor Elaine set her glass down. I let one beat pass, then finished. The caller identified herself as Mrs. Grant. Every eye in that yard went to Kelsey. Derek finally spoke. "You called them." Kelsey looked at him, then at me, and stayed silent. She did not deny it. She did not need to. Silence was enough. "So yes," I said. "I canceled 4 tickets and the original reservation. Not out of spite, because they were mine to cancel. I did not destroy a trip. I took back my own. Before my son learned he had to make himself smaller to be included in something I paid for." Beverly straightened, all wounded outrage now. "You are airing family business in front of everybody." It stopped being private when you used my card and used my child as an excuse. I handed Wade the final sheet. This is what I've paid toward this family over the years: school supplies, holiday groceries, insurance, dental work, repairs, flights, gifts, camp deposits, emergencies that never came back. The number at the bottom is what keeping the peace cost me. Mrs. Delaney looked down at the page, then over the top of it at Beverly, with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Wade stepped forward before my mother could rebuild herself. "This is not new," he said. "Beverly did something close enough to this with Rita Sloan years ago. When Rita stopped helping, Beverly told the family Rita had become cold and selfish. She gets ahead of the story. That is what she does." My mother whipped toward him. "You do not know what you are talking about." Wade did not raise his voice. "I know exactly what I'm talking about." I turned to Thomas. "You saw the boxes going to Kelsey's, didn't you? You saw my card in Mom's wallet more than once." His face looked older than it had the day before. He stared at the grass for a second, then said, "I should have said something sooner." That was all. No speech, no rescue, just the truth dragged into daylight. Kelsey tried one last move. "The kids are going to hear all of this." Right on cue, Addie called from near the fence, loud and cheerful and completely unaware of the wreckage around her. "Evan, are you still going to see the monkeys?" That ended it better than I ever could have. Derek looked at Kelsey like he was seeing the shape of his marriage from outside it for the first time. "You knew from the start she paid for all of it, didn't you?" Kelsey crossed her arms and looked away. I closed the folder. "I do not owe any of you my silence anymore." Then I called for Evan. He came running over, a little breathless, and slid his hand into mine without asking a single question. We walked out through the side gate under my mother's string lights while nobody in that yard tried to stop us. Wade texted me later that night. Beverly tried to say I was being dramatic. Nobody followed her. Pastor Elaine left early. Mrs. Delaney said if what I told them was true, the problem was not that I spoke, the problem was that they let it happen. Thomas sat on the patio after everyone left and did not move for a long time. Kelsey and Derek fought the entire drive home. The next morning, Evan stood at Charlotte Douglas with his backpack on and his passport clutched in one hand, still half afraid the whole thing might vanish if he blinked too slowly. "Are we really going?" I smiled at him for the first time in days. This time, yes, this trip belongs to us. Before we boarded, my phone lit up one last time with a text from Beverly. It had everything in it except the word sorry. I switched the phone to airplane mode and put it away. The place we stayed in Ubud was smaller than the original resort, and better for that exact reason. There was no one to manage, no complaints to absorb, no schedule to negotiate around other people's moods, just a quiet terrace, morning fruit, strong coffee, and my son finally unclenching in real time. At the monkey forest, one of the monkeys came close enough to make Evan freeze, then laugh so hard he grabbed my arm and nearly folded over. I took the picture anyway, blurry and perfect. We took a cooking class 2 days later, and he stirred a pan with all the seriousness of a child certain he was learning something important. We ate breakfast outside every morning. No one asked me for money, no one expected me to fix the emotional weather before the day could begin. It was not a perfect vacation in the glossy brochure sense. It was better than that. It was honest. When we came home, Beverly did not apologize. Kelsey sent one text saying I always made everything bigger than it needed to be. Derek, from what Wade later told me, started asking questions about money he should have asked years earlier. Thomas called me and apologized again, this time without hiding behind everybody was tired or things got out of hand. I listened. I did not hand him everything back because he had finally found the right words. I opened a new account. I changed every auto pay tied to the old card. I closed every easy door my family had been using for years and never announced it as some grand declaration. I just stopped giving people access they had mistaken for love. A few weeks later, Evan came home from school with a piece of construction paper folded in half. He handed it to me while I was standing at the kitchen counter. It was a drawing of the two of us, a bunch of green trees, a little monkey near his shoulder, and a yellow sun in the corner. Underneath, in uneven block letters, he had written, "My mom keeps her promises." I put it on the fridge and stood there looking at it longer than I needed to. I did not win because I hurt them more than they hurt me. I did not win because everybody suddenly admitted I was right. I won because I refused to let my son learn that love should cost him pieces of himself. And sometimes that is the closest thing to justice there is, not getting everybody's permission, just no longer needing it. If you have ever been the person your family called first when they needed money, help, cleanup, or someone to absorb the mess and make it look easy, then you already know this story did not begin with a vacation. It began the first time someone took something from you and called it love. If that has ever been your role, leave me a comment. I read them all. And if stories like this speak to you, stay with the channel.